Welcome to episode 10 of Fired Up for Friday, the podcast telling you what's dropping this Friday that got me fired up. As always, we got another killer week of metal releases. And we got a bunch of different subgenre of metal too. We got some progressive metal, some groove metal, some death metal, some psych metal. Some of these albums I listened to were way better than I anticipated. This was like an extra surprising week for me. I'd like to thank the bands, the labels, and PR for sending all this fire over for me. If you're in a band, label, or PR and want to be featured on the Fired Up for Friday podcast or any other aspect of the Metal Institute of Thrashology, reach out to me. Email me at metalinstituteofthrashology@gmail.com, all one long-ass word. No numbers, hyphens, question marks, or any of that stuff. It's hard enough for me to spell that whole email address out on my own. If you're in a band and you want to start a name, make sure it's short and easy to spell. Thrash Facts. And most importantly, thank you to all you metalheads who tune in every week and listen to me spout off nonsense about what albums I like. With so much heavy dropping on Fridays, I feel like I miss a ton. So if you are excited about something dropping this week, or even the last couple weeks, let me know in the comments so I don't miss it. And if you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, comment, do all that kind of stuff. The engagement helps the algorithm support metal, and it helps me discover new music. So thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with me for yet another Fired Up for Friday. Let's dig in and see what's got me fired up for this Friday, April 3rd, 2026. Oftentimes, art imitates life, whether it be anthems of rebellion, anti-war music, everyday stories, love songs, and so many more, which I feel allows listeners to connect with the music that much more. And I have a rough idea how long it takes to write, record, edit, and release a video. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's even cooler when an album release coincidentally aligns with real-life stories that were unplanned and strictly coincidental. Spanish epic doom band SolNegre's latest release, Anthems for the Grand Collapse, is a perfect example of this feeling for me. What I like most about this album is the death metal style music that's slowed down, and a doomy approach is applied on top of it, over top of the black and charred vocal approach. These crisp cadences are in contrast to the sparsely placed clean vocals, making Anthems for the Grand Collapse one unique album in two very crowded genres of metal, like Death and Doom. Never leaning too far into one or the other, this is a well-balanced album, and you can almost feel the pulse of not only this album, but the Grand Collapse as the album comes to a close. What threw me for a loop on this album was I entered into the listening session thinking of like smothering and suffocating in a collapse. Sort of like an avalanche, maybe a collapsing building. Being buried beneath the rubble with slim chances of survivability. But after I ran through Anthems for the Grand Collapse several times, I walked away feeling quite the opposite. The emptiness of structure, the expansiveness of riffs, and most importantly, the escape for me. If only for an hour or two or three, depending on how many times I listen to Anthems for the Grand Collapse. It feels as almost a transcendence beyond the problems that have been plaguing humanity since the birth of mankind. Wars, plagues, famines, genocide, and that's just to name a few. This is for fans of that progressive doom death style music, like Saturnus, November's Tears, or Spectrum with 3 M's, the band out of Brazil. Spectrum with 3 M's is a little underground band I dig too, so you should check those guys out. Little bonus tip. And with the assembling of this album after the Grand Collapse, this one transcended to an 84, a solid B for me. Really enjoyed this album. To keep art with an imitating life theme, Bragging Rights, who released their album Carpe Jugulum back in November, is back with another full length, a comedy divine. While it was back in November, it kinda only feels like 2 weeks ago. And written about a sudden loss of his best friend and his dog, Braggin' Rights releases the grief in a cathartic way, channeling it into a sonic force of groove metal that's similar to Strapping Young Lad or maybe even Gojira. And you can almost feel the shedding of grief, like the shedding of skin, in crunchy, metallic guitar tones, breaks, and slides. And Comedy Divine does sound more like a comedy and less like a tragedy of loss, as he honors his best friend in a respectable but heavy way. Big, Gojira sounding grooves in this one that feel anthemic and optimistic, letting listeners know that better times lay ahead. It could be I just like the grooves that much, but either way, as a lesser known, more underground metal artist, don't think his sounds aren't gigantic, because they are. And if you're a fan of Gojira or Strapping Young Lad, you're gonna love this. While Braggin' Rights doesn't invent anything new or push any boundaries, this is a powerful album with catchy riffs and brutal punishment. Most importantly, I think this is a great way to release negative emotions while paying tribute and honor the memory of a best friend. I'm giving this well-written homage a 76, solid C. If I would have had a bit more time to play with this album, maybe it would have been a bit higher. There's not enough time in the day to listen to everything I want. Art can imitate the end of life too. Enter into the picture your two pilots, the Philadelphia space rockers, Deathbird, Earth. If you're like me and you listen to metal all over the map, and whether it's different albums, riffs, bands, genres, once in a while a sound is so unique or a performance so different you'll never forget it. In late 2024, I caught the Descendants of Crom Festival here in Pittsburgh at the Shred Shed. And the Descendants of Crom is a unique festival that collects and connects some of the heaviest and most talented bands of the region surrounding Pittsburgh. And at my very first attendance, I happened to catch the Philadelphia band Stinking Lizavada. And as soon as they took the stage, I saw an upright bass and I knew I was in for something special. So when I pressed play on Deathbird Earth's latest release, Objective Consciousness, I knew I heard some familiar sounds, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Objective Consciousness, that is released on SRA Records, reminds me of Stinking Lizavada, but it's vastly different. It's more expansive and it's more spatial. And while spatial both in cosmic elements and negative spaces, this progressive metal band with doom influences is only the tip of descriptive terms of this proverbial iceberg. And recorded as an improv session, Deathbird Earth managed to capture that live performance feel, putting a bit of that chemistry on wax. Fuck AI, this is why supporting underground live musicians matters. This album was phenomenal. This was another full length that had me feeling like I was space caking my way through the galaxy. And while there's probably a lot of scary shit in space, I think if I was listening to this while cruising the cosmos, I probably wouldn't care. And I'm not sure if Deathbird Earth is going to be touring after this one, or if Stinking Lizavada's due to rip up across America, but if they are, go see it! You have to! Well worth a night out for an unforgettable show. This had me exploring the caves of my mind, which might be the only place that has more space than space. And I had some charts and graphs, some different numbers I was working on, trying to get a grade of this. This was too hard for me to grade. Lyrical? There are none. It's an instrumental. Story of the album? It tells one, but it could be different every time you listen to it. It was for me. Scariness? It's space. There could be monsters. This is an amazing album. Head over to SRA Records or Deathbird Earth's Bandcamp and get some Deathbird in your life. Absolutely great stuff. And while it's titled Deathbird Earth, this is one magical improv, just like everyday life on Earth. I'm gonna give it an 86 on overall sound. Don't pay any attention to these numbers though, I just kind of threw them in there. This is a hard one for me to assign a number to. It's just kind of like a good ass feeling. And now we're gonna breathe some life into death. We're now a quarter of the way into 2026 and I'm still hearing people complain that there's no good music being released. Apparently those people don't watch Fired Up for Friday, now do they? So I always ask these people, what kind of music do you like? And then you get those people who say, I like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and the classics. When I'm thinking of the classic Priest and Maiden, it's the early ones, the Defenders of the Faith, the Killers, the self-titled Maiden. So I have a brand new album capturing that new wave of Chinese heavy metal sound. Yeah, Chinese. A Chinese metal band living in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, they moved here from China. That's why they're a Chinese band in Georgia. Chariots Overdrive released their debut full-length in the end of Antiquity as they explore Chinese folklore, historical themes, and stories from their culture. I like how they pay tribute to that old school, new wave of British heavy metal sound, the benefits of modern production, and incorporating own elements of their heritage. I get some strong Enforcer feelings while having a lot of Metal Lucifer leanings too. And this is another much welcome blast from the past. The thing that stood out to me most, and rarely will you ever hear me saying this, those bass lines were juicy as hell. And I didn't even think bassists were considered part of the band. And as a thrasher, the guitar tones reminded me of Kill 'Em All by Metallica. What thrasher doesn't love those? It's an impressive debut with that old school sound, modern updates, and tons of attention to detail. These dudes are out there killing it, like Kill 'Em All. Clocking in at a 78. With art imitating life, life doesn't always work out to be sunshine and rainbows. Bands come and go, reform, break up, and such is progress. But it's that kind of sharing of scenes and members that creates dynamic sounds, push boundaries, and keeps the metal scene thriving. And while I grew up listening to tons of Bay Area thrash, the last couple of years, I've been loving Rust Belt thrash. And one of the heaviest cities in that Rust Belt is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Ain't nothing cheesy about them. A city so metal, it named its baseball team after a party. And it hosts one of the sickest metal festivals in all of the country. And the Milwaukee Metal Fest, of course. Go get your tickets to that party in the description. I'll put links there to get tickets. They ain't paying me and they probably don't know I exist. But I saw it's a kick-ass lineup and I'm down to support the scene. The new Neck Wreckers and Relic released a badass EP in their latest, Crown of Flies. Before we tear into this badass album, can we talk about this sick-ass artwork by St. V. Schreiber? This gotta be one of my favorite album covers of this year so far. The music is just as creative as the album art, made up of members from Jungle Rot, Emblazoned, and Slam Pig. Don't think you're getting the ballad on this one. Brutal black and death metal, nice grooves, tons of carnage, and the vocals had a few grooves in them too. Heavier Pantera? Is that ever a problem? And while Crown of Flies is Relic's debut album, don't think these dudes are a bunch of rookies. Did you just hear the bands I named? If you didn't, rewind, it's YouTube. My only mistake listening to Relic was I bumped the loop button. And as the EP kept looping, I kept saying, this sounds familiar. So while the EP is only 4 songs in 15 minutes, my copy lasted about an hour and a half. Badass debuts getting an 85 from me. And no wonder there's so many lakes in the Rust Belt. The metal's heavy as hell. And now it's time for the album of last week. The album of last week for me was Aggressive Perfector's sophomore album, Come Creeping Fiends, which is a mix of early thrash with some blackened feelings, but it also has a new wave of British heavy metal that you just can't deny. I sent this album over to Dr. Destruction for him to check out, and I think I used the descriptive terms. This is what it sounds like if Midnight or Venom was covering some Iron Maiden. which just sounds awesome to me. There's a surprising amount of catchiness, which I don't know if I want to call it melody, it's just solid riff writing. And this album feels raw, chaotic, it has plenty of speed. At times, feeling a bit unhinged as if the wheels could come off, but somehow they manage to stay on. Come Creeping Fiends has tons of energy, but the pacing is really nice. The way the album's laid out keeps it fresh even after multiple listens. I also appreciate that they left a bit of rawness on the production, which reminds me of that old school 80s sound. What aggressive Perfector does is take those early sounds and influences and make them their own by injecting a bunch of speed and attitude. And while I'm only giving this album an 82, but the replayability and the likability, I don't know if likability is a word, but I'm gonna use it, is much higher than this score would suggest. What did I miss? What did I get right? What are you looking forward to coming up this Friday? And as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I love it. Keep it thrashing.